Literacy is the key for all children to be successful in school.
Many times children don't like to read because they don't find a point in reading a book that doesn't have anything that pertains to them.
That seems to be the way often we select materials if we're not careful in our attempt to be sensitive to the culture and the race. We'll get a book that we feel comfortable with, and it'll have images that really look more like white people or what white people would be doing, and not naturally what I would do or what I could relate to. So I can have something that looks like me, but nothing about the story relates to my experience. As a matter of fact, it's a lot like Dick and Jane colored brown.
In order to get kids to read, you must have books that are interesting to them, that they can relate to.
Literature opens up people in a way that nothing else can.
Early in the semester, as part of their community immersion program, students began examining a collection of African American children's literature.
We came up with criteria that we were going to judge the books on. Then we found books that fit our criteria or mostly fit our criteria.
They began casting their net very wide and really collecting a very broad range of literature.
The next thing we did was then we just had a huge reading party, and all of us read all of the books.
And we have just piles of books, and what do we do with them? We read all through them, and we review them and just decide which books that we thought would be good for the community.
And once we were finished with that, then we started to sort them into thematic categories.
At that point, they decided that it was really, really important to get some community input on the books that they had selected and to get some feedback on how the community members felt about those books. So we organized an event where community members could come and examine the body of literature that students had selected and give their input on that, give their impressions of the literature, give their feedback on the quality of the literature that was selected, and share with students why the pieces that they had chosen were so important to them.
We had an event where community members could come and they could read the books themselves, and we could get their input, which was really important because no one else knows the community better than them.
I was extremely excited about the opportunity to be able to look at the books that are available and then to help make a decision about books that I know the children have not seen probably.
The way that the event was structured, the books were categorized at certain tables, and students were able to give very short book talks about some of their favorite pieces, and community members were given the time and the space to go around, to read, to examine, and to reflect on the literature that was there and make their selects about the pieces that they felt really compelled to share with children in their community.
The community members got to come in and read the books and give us feedback on what they thought and review the books and just tell us their life stories.
Us being able to have the opportunity to maybe select some books that we think would be important for our community was also a great opportunity.
For our students to be able to participate in an event with community members where they were really authentically talking about not only children's literature, but also about the history and the lives of community members and how that connected with the literature that they wanted to read to children, I think was really a special opportunity.
So to get their point of view and for them to say, these are the books that our kids need, it was something very important for us to do.
It's one thing to choose literature for children, but I think it's really unique to be able to ask community members and families and parents and grandparents what it is they want for their children and what kinds of books they would like their children to be exposed to and to have teachers read in the classroom.
Coming to the literacy event here as a parent, as a community member, it gave me a chance to say, you know what, this looks like a fine book, but this is not one I would want my child reading. This is a little bit too strong, it's a little bit too harsh, or it's a little bit too fake. It's not realistic. They can't relate to this.
There was no way of us doing this without their voice. It's not fair to a community for people outside the community to come in and tell them what they need or what we think they need.
I want to carefully select those books and that material, and I want those books I have for my kids to the books themselves to reflect the things that I think are important.
I think it's very important that children see themselves in books, and that families see themselves and their children in books.
It's important for children to know that they exist. And one of the ways that they know that is through seeing their face in a book.
I feel like this just shows how important finding literature that relates to students is, because I think that's something that a lot of teachers forget when they're planning out lessons or when they're figuring out what they want to put in their classroom library. They don't realize that kids want to see themselves in the books and want to find literature that they can connect with and that they can relate to their friends or their families.
I think that the children, if they have a book in front of them that has an interest that they have, it will give them more of an incentive to want to go get that book.
Well, it's important to see that there are people out there that look like them who's done great things. It gives them that motivation, that initiative, that drive to know that I too can do just what has been done.
It's just great to be able to acknowledge that someone has gone before you and tackled the goal, and they have a story to relate back to a child to say, you can do it. May be hard, but you can do it. And this is how I did it.
They don't have African American authored books. They don't have books with children who look like them. And for them, that's important to be able to say, these are mine. And I can do this. I can be this. And I'm going to hold tight to this dream.
So I just think bombarding kids with images of themselves doing great things, it just reminds them that they can do great things and that they are great.
Plus, books just open up so many. I don't know how many of our kids in our community travel, but in books you can travel. In books you can be any and everybody. You can imagine, you can dream. And I think that's why it's important for the kids in our community. It gives them opportunity to dream. It gives them opportunity to have a vision for their life. And it takes them places that they maybe not go.
But we almost need someone to tell us or something to affirm that we are okay, that our hair is okay, that our skin tone is okay, that the way we talk is okay, that the way we dress is okay.
And for books that, you know, present the beauty of who you really are is something that everyone needs, but you don't find it in a lot of times where you really need it.
I would love to say, we know who we are and no one has to sanction that, no one has to celebrate that, but for whatever reason, and I mean there are a lot of connecting reasons from history, but for whatever reason we need to, I mean I'm 38 and I still feel like I need somebody to say, it's okay.
The books provided a mechanism that triggered memories for people from the community. And so while they were reading about a trip with a grandfather, some of the community members were remembering trips that they had taken, and they became very animated and they began to share memories that they had from their own childhoods.
Mostly some of the books that really talked about family, family interactions. I remember you know, the one with the young lady and her aunt going on a trip. I remember family trips and getting up in the early morning and frying chicken, and you smell chicken all in the house, and your mom fries chicken and you had to have white bread to go in there. As soon as we get in the car, we were hungry, of course, and you ask your parents, they said, no, we're gonna drive. So that brought back memories of the trips we used to take down to Mississippi and Arkansas in the summers, and just to remember that, you know, you forget those kind of things, but you remember the smell in the house.
Some of the books that we read, the folk tales, were things that I read with my grandmother. And it reminded me of my grandmother and some of the things that we've done together, quilt making, things like that.
I was clear across the room, and one of the books clear on the other side of the room, I could see it was called I Love My Hair. And little African American girls, our hair, as you know, we're known for a lot of hair. And when it's wet, it explodes. And I remember as I was growing up, I had long hair. And my mother never washed my hair with water from the tap. she always washed my hair with rainwater. And she always put a little small amount of vinegar in the water, and my hair was just like silk.
And I think this here was a good example of books that related back to personal experience. In my case, I know I can relate back to the sit-ins, to where we had a book about the sit-ins, and I can relate to that because of my own personal experience with that. So it was good to see that books like that are still available, so kids coming up who really don't understand what has transpired in the past and how important it is for them to realize that those things really are important and should be remembered.
I know I was really excited about one on civil rights, and the fact that when I first came to Muncie from Louisiana and had the opportunity to help make some changes in our community. And it was a wonderful, positive book to be able to share the stories with kids who really need to hear those stories, need to learn about what happened years ago in a positive way.
To have a canon of books that I was a part of selecting, that I was able to hear Miss Maud Jennings and Miss Siobhan Thompson share about, even if I can't connect with the book, when they share about something that happened in the 50s that I can't relate to, or in the 30s I can't relate to, then that lets me know this is a good history book for me to have for my child.
The books that were related to history, particularly Martin Luther King, civil rights, brought back a lot of memories of the struggle that African Americans went through, and the fact that young children do not identify with that anymore because they have not gone through the struggle. So it made me think that, wow, I should be using these types of books with young children so that they can see what their history is about.
It's our culture, and we should really cherish and have that as part of the things that we should always have in remembrance and hold dear as our history, you know, what has happened and how we should always remember those things.
Their history is important. Their history relates to their community. Their history relates to the schools. They're in integrated schools and not in segregated schools because of that history. They are riding on the front of the bus because of Rosa Parks. You know, they have a dream because Martin Luther King had a dream. And I don't think that young people today and children today really understand the significance of that history.
The event was an important process because much was discovered and much was uncovered in the conversations about the text.
What will happen now is that those 20 pieces of literature will be gifted to all of the different educational institutions in the community.
I think it's going to be a very positive experience for the children to see them in different places because their lives take them to different venues and places, and I think it'll be exciting for them to see how everybody is reading those books, not just in February during African American History Month. I think this is just a very unique experience that I think every community should have with books like this.
They'll be gifted to the elementary school, to the early childhood program, to the community center, to the church, so that wherever children go in the community, they'll be able to interact with those stories.
It's always important to have worth and value, and to know that those particular agencies or churches will have that information and have those books to share, and to be able to show that people have value. That is so important.
But I think a book in their hands, it will give the parents an opportunity to be more engaging with their kids, to sit down and to read.
To have these books in the community is especially important, again, as I cannot emphasize too much, to know that that's me, to give me a sense of being, a sense of identification.
I hope that the different agencies that receive these books will have a chance to sit down with the children and talk with them so that the children can share and give their feelings about what they've read in those books, and so that we can listen to them. That means a lot.
Hopefully they will be inspired enough that after we read them all, they will want to go find more, and we kind of know what to look for.
I saw people laugh, I saw people cry, I saw people willing to stay the whole time and wanting to know what the results were.
It was just fascinating. Couldn't hardly wait to get to the next table.
It was just a joyful experience.
The community members were being treated like educators.
It was wonderful. It really was just a wonderful experience.
It was just an exciting morning that I will never, ever forget.